Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Floor U podcast. I'm Paul Pleshek. I'm here with my usual co-host, Sonny Callahan. Sonny,
hello. How you doing, Mr. Paul?
Oh, couldn't be better. Couldn't be better. Packers are 4-1.
Living the dream.
Joined with it by our guest today, John Downey of CIRI and God only knows how many other things. How you doing, John?
Hey, I'm good, Paul. How are you? Hey, Sonny.
Hey, John. Thanks for being on with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Like I said, I'm doing well. The Packers beat the Cowboys. I mean, how many people saw that coming?
America.
I thought they were America's team. Oh, wait, that's the Packers.
I think your Badgers beat a high school team this past week, too. So you should be really proud of that.
Oh, yeah, because Ohio State's played nothing but top 10 teams this year. Yeah.
Well, they're going to be playing one here in a couple of weeks. We'll see how that goes.
At least your reputation's intact now that Urban Meyer's gone, right? Sort of. Yeah. I can't imagine how he was so successful. Never mind. We won't go there. We'll talk after the Badgers beat the hell out of you in the shoe. 3 weeks.
We're not going to talk for a while. That might be a few years before that happens.
So we're going to schedule you for 2027.
Oh, man. Boy, I can't wait to talk to you guys after that game. Meantime, Sonny's sitting there going, yeah, I don't know. Those teams don't even sound familiar to me. Are they in the SEC?
Yeah. They're out of the top 5. I don't care.
Are they? Is Ohio State out of the top 5?
No, Ohio State's probably 4 or 5, yeah.
Yeah, they were, I think they probably are still at 4. They were at 4 last week.
Yeah.
Badgers won, but number 7, was it number 7? I always mix them up. Clemson or Auburn? Which one lost on lost to?
Lost Florida.
Auburn lost to Florida.
Which means the Badgers will probably drop because that's just how it works for the Badgers. It never works out in their favor. Look at what they'll be the first undefeated team to miss the college playoff. Really, John?
Sorry.
Hey, we're recording here.
I'm trying to turn the volume off. Sorry, I didn't.
Let's go back to.
I'm the only one in the office. Go back.
Hopefully, it's not a real busy day. I was just going back to Dirty Deeds while your phone was ringing.
All right. We're back.
So, but on that note, we do have some sports going on. We do have. It's a great time of year. It's a great time of year.
It's the best time of year, no doubt.
My
Baseball's
Brewers
in the postseason.
My Brewers led for about 8.5 innings. That was nice. Kicked the ball.
I really thought the Brewers, they were on a roll. They had gotten through that game.
And then it just rolled right by him. Oh, is that too soon, Paul? Too soon?
No, just never too soon. No, it's not.
That young man will be haunted for a long time for that play.
What is he next? Is he another Buckner?
Buckner. Yeah.
Yeah, another Buckner.
Red Sox.
Nah, I don't even remember his name, so I forget who was playing right field.
Yeah.
I have no idea. He's not a Yankee, so I don't really know.
It hit the news the next day, and most people in Wisconsin said, "Oh, the Brewers were still playing." It's football season; they were still playing. So, other than that, John, we had John in. We're on our 4th show now, so we had John in because we've focused a lot on the installation side of it. We focused some on manufacturing. And this is really a focus on maintenance. This is a focus on science of cleaning. And there's not really a better guest for that than John, because you are director of CIRI?
Executive director, and CIRI stands for the Cleaning Industry Research Institute.
I went and obviously researched a little bit. I'm not going back to your photos page. I don't want to see it. Knowing that those things are on here and everything else, those microorganisms gave me the creeps.
Was it like the Scared Straight program? You got all the.
I went right upstairs and showered after that.
It's true.
Well, tell us a little bit about CIRI, John.
Well, CIRI has its origins going back about 15 years before my time. I've only been involved for the past couple years, less than 2 years. But its origins is in the janitorial cleaning industry. And it was founded by a group that included the publisher at that time of CleanFacts. He also was the publisher, his name's Humphrey Tyler. He was also the publisher of Cleaning Management magazine, which was in the janitorial area. He brought in somebody who was a very well-known trainer in the janitorial cleaning industry, Jim Harris, who to this day is still the chairman of CIRI. But CIRI kind of became very successful very quickly, in the sense that they got several projects to do within a matter of a couple years. And one in particular, it kind of overwhelmed CIRI. It put everything they had into it. It's called the Clean Standard. And the Clean Standard is a standard that they did for the ISSA, the International Sanitary Supply Association. And it was based on, and what started before the standard, they had to do research. So they did research to figure out what would be the best way to measure clean. And they ended up with a testing process that involved ATP. And don't ask me to say what ATP stands for. Something phosphate, triphosphate. Anyway, so they used ATP as the basis for measurement. There was a lot of research done. Then they developed a standard, and the industry doesn't really have a history. The cleaning industry does not have a history of significant research. And so when this research was done, there was, as is very common in research, there were the price was higher than originally expected. And so it became contentious in some ways. There were some hard feelings. There were a lot of people doing a lot of things to put it together, and especially Jim Harris, who was getting pressure both from the scientists on the one side and pressure from ISSA executives on the other. And so they finally put it together, got it done, and then went to put together the standard from it. Once the standard was completed, it was within a matter of less than a year, the standard was kind of abandoned by ISSA. And so CIRI for a time just kind of ran out of gas. And the reason the standard was I'll say abandoned by ISSA was it really was not supported by the membership of ISSA. ISSA is a trade association. That's another part of the discussion that we should have, contrasting what CIRI is to trade associations. But the members of ISSA did not really support it. There were, I won't get into details of the issues. There were legitimate issues all around, but it just, basically people were exhausted. So after that, CIRI continued to function, did another research project that was not published, was not released because of political stuff related to trade association.
Who knew flooring could be so political?
Right.
So, so that's kind of the history before my time with CIRI. I came to CIRI a couple years ago after I had been doing a peer review publication for the IICRC, which they suspended and then ultimately abandoned. It was called the Journal of Cleaning, Restoration, and inspection. And I still feel to this day, obviously, that it is critical that we have a scientific basis for the technical information that we disseminate in the industry. So I went to CIRI, went to Jim Harris, Bob Robinson, Charlie Smith, Steve Spivak. You may be familiar with Spivak a little bit, I'm not sure. Basically the people on the executive committee, and we kind of re-envisioned what CIRI was. I called it not a restart, but a relaunch in technology. I can't think of
reboot.
A reboot. That's it. Yes, that was exactly it. So I kind of pitched it to them as a reboot. They liked what I was looking for. So we actually changed it in a lot of ways. The membership structure, who we were reaching out to, how we were reaching out to people. Because of my background in communications, we made the communications component of CIRI much more robust. We added a peer review publication, Cleaning Science Quarterly, and have been working since then to continue to rebuild and re-energize CIRI. We had a cleaning science symposium this past summer at Miami University in Ohio. And then that was our last big project. We have a few things that we're working on right now that could also be extremely helpful to the industry. I gave you a lot longer answer than you wanted, probably.
Well, I think the fact that both Sonny and I shut up for about 5 minutes there tells us how much we were interested in the answer. So. We talked a little bit, and I don't want to, I kind of tend to jump around. I did that last week too. And so if you need to refocus me, feel free. We talked a little bit about the relationship before we got started, the relationship between different standards organizations. If you go through the flooring industry, just the sheer quantity of industry related groups and associations and institutes.
Too many acronyms.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
What is the relationship between CIRI and IICRC then? Because you've got an organization that is the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, obviously a certifying body, standards organization. But their goal, of course, is to have science-based standards, science-based certifications. Is there a relationship between CIRI and IICRC right now, or is there a loosely based one? How do they interact?
So we're working together. Honestly, we're working together to work together. That would be the best way I could describe it.
Okay.
And there is an awareness, I think an increased awareness in the IICRC about the importance of science, and especially in support of standards. But on the I got to be a little bit careful on what I say, because I want to be nice.
We'll both be careful today. How about that, John?
That has not historically been committed to science. And I say,
wait, can you say that again? I'm going to make you say it.
I want you to erase that.
Cut that out.
It's not that they aren't. As I said, there's an increased awareness and appreciation for that. My goal when I worked directly with the IICRC was exactly what you're talking about. And ultimately, they opted to not do it anymore. The IICRC, under the law, as the type of organization they are, is they're a trade association. They're a 501c6 trade association. Now, they don't really operate, that's not their primary function, but it is what they are. And CIRI is not. CIRI is a professional technical organization. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. And a lot of people don't understand the distinction, but it is an important distinction. A trade association, as I said, that's what ultimately what the IICRC is.
I agree with you. I'm nodding my head, smiling.
I had some conversations about this. There was all trade associations' responsibility under the law. Their primary responsibility is to their members. So the IICRC claims they don't have members.
Registrants.
Registrants, and they have certified firms. I think if we ever had to have a test under the law in court about the membership of IICRC, it would be their certified firms. They are essentially a membership class. The registrants earn their registration through basically taking exams, but the certified firms, it's a different thing. And that's what they are. Now CIRI, on the other hand, as a professional technical organization, its responsibility, and again, this isn't me saying it, this is under the law. If you read the statutes and you read court decisions relating to different types of organizations, CIRI's responsibility is to the overall industry and to the public. And they're actually the public over the overall industry. Its membership is not a primary consideration. So the types of things that each organization does, and CIRI is involved in science and research, that their focus is different because of type of organization they are.
I say I agree with you, and because it's always said to me that it's a certification and standards body. IICRC is a certification and standards body. Clearly, there are two different types of organizations.
If I could share this real quick with you, I agree. What in reality the IICRC is a trade association with a very robust certification and standards writing function. There is no conflict between being a trade association and having a robust function in certification and standards.
Agreed. Now, and just a little background, you've been involved with the IICRC for years as well, having, as you said, run the journal, which was a science-based journal. Have you been on the board? Have you served on the board or?
Served on the board. I've been involved with the IICRC back to the mid-1980s. So yeah, I go back a long way.
You've been, most recently, you've been a shareholder rep, working with the shareholders to elect the board.
Correct.
And so you've been off the board then for how long?
Probably 6 or 7 years, I believe.
Oh, congratulations. And I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
They booted me off.
They booted you. Well, even great coaches like Urban Meyer get fired eventually.
If I had his record, I wouldn't have been booted off.
If you had his reputation, you would.
What you were just talking about. What you were just talking about with the IICRC, we really touched on that last week slightly. It has a lot of similarities with ASTM, and we talked about this, before we got on. But sometimes ASTM, especially in the FO6 committee, it's not science-based. These documents, these standards, these things we're writing, it's consensus-based. And sometimes, you want things to be science-based, but now they're going to be consensus-based, and I think it loses some of the strength or the teeth for the document because it's got to make its way through hundreds of people to get the consensus as opposed to just being based on science.
Agreed.
So I just wanted to say it's not just the IICRC. We're not saying anything negative about them at all. It's just the way our industry is set up. And, based on some of the other committees that I'm involved with at ASTM, FO6 just seems to be the least science-based, good, bad, or indifferent. That's what it is. It's the least science-based, and it's manufacturer-based. It's application-based, things like that.
In some areas, it is less risky to do consensus-based standards than other areas. With the IICRC, their cleaning standards, I think, generally speaking, are pretty secure. But when you're getting into restoration and remediation areas, you're talking about things that have potential, there could be potential litigation issues. And if they are providing quote unquote industry standards that are being depended on, some of this is health related, for providing data and processes for maybe immune compromised people, restoration issues, remediation issues. If you aren't grounded, even with the disclaimers that you'll see on all their standards, if you are presenting this as an industry standard and you're the organization that did the standard, if it gets into litigation, they recognize this. That's why they're interested, I believe, in trying to develop some science. There is a potential liability there.
You mean indoor air quality is a potential hot button?
Just a little.
Slightly.
But we get into this everywhere, right? So consensus, it only really takes over where science is fuzzy or where science is unclear. We could talk about any subject you want in that area. The reason there's a so-called consensus on global warming is because it's not proven, or it's not at least proven how it's caused. If it was proven, it would be fact, not consensus. So there's a difference there between what you absolutely can prove, and those gray areas are really where consensus comes in. What the testing methods were, how that conclusion was reached, the scientific process in reaching that conclusion. And so where does CIRI come in and say, when you have certain test sample size that give you a greater indication of consistency, you have different test methods, and the more you refine it down, how does CIRI continue to go on then and prove the results of their tests? What do you do to go back and then try to further test your hypothesis, or do you just leave that then up to other organizations, or see if there's any disagreement?
Well, all right, CIRI CIRI has one part of in fact, it's the most critical part of CIRI is the Science Advisory Council. And the Science Advisory Council is a group of scientists, all of them researchers, who have been involved in doing various types of research over a long period of time. The chairman is Steve Spivak. The council includes Richard Shaughnessy, who is one of, if not the world's foremost expert in indoor air quality. Sonny, I mean, he's right up there. Gene Cole is another member. Greg Whiteley is also a member, and Greg and Gene, first of all, works in collaboration with Whiteley, or not Whiteley, with Shaughnessy on a lot of things. Greg Whiteley in hygiene and disinfection is certainly one of the foremost researchers, and he also is a manufacturer. We have a couple other members, John Richter, and I'm going to be embarrassed that I don't remember all the SAC members, but they're researchers and scientists. That's what they do. So what CIRI does is we don't have a budget to do research on our own. We can only do research if organizations reach out to us and say, we would like to learn this, and we would like you to develop a protocol to test this. and that's where CIRI comes in. And
Okay.
we're working with some people now on developing. You start with in science, you start with a hypothesis. So you develop a hypothesis. From that hypothesis, you develop a protocol to test it, and then you do your testing, and then you do an assessment of your test results.
If you prove you're right, you've got a result, and if they prove you're wrong, you develop a new hypothesis. Sounds like a scientific method to me.
Exactly what it is. And honestly, in science, the way it's looked at is, regardless, the actual research is valuable, whether it proves your hypothesis or disproves it. It basically gives you information that you didn't have before, and then from that you develop it. I will add something that you probably aren't aware of. I wasn't aware of it. I think very few people in the cleaning and restoration industry are aware of it, and that is there is a very large body of research that has been done that is at least overlaps with, related to the things that we do in our industry, and that is in academic research. I attended a conference at Ohio State.
Excuse me?
OHIO.
Never heard of it.
I like their band.
The end of July. It was an academic conference. I was the only speaker there who came from the industry, from the cleaning and maintenance industry. And the conference was about carpet as basically its role in the indoor environment. And most of the papers presented talked about carpet being a environmental problem, a emitter and resuspender of soil and particles and mold and things like that. So there's been a lot of research done, but there were two things I would say about that. One is the research that's been done has been done largely ignorant of what is the real world of the cleaning industry. And then the second thing, and this was, so the first part is kind of, it's kind of like, I don't get it. The second part to me was hopeful, and that was, not to brag on myself, but I was kind of like a rock star at that conference because they were all interested. They were very interested in what I had to say about cleaning and maintenance. That told me that there is a hunger, there is a recognition that there needs to be a connection, and that's what's missing, is a connection between research and practice. And that, if you really want to know what I think CIRI's role is, it's to be the connective tissue between research and practice.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm trying to think of an analogy that I can use here, but the way our entire industry is disconnected from the step before flooring goes in and the step after flooring goes in, be it application, be it science, we just don't take that extra step to get involved to understand. And like what you said before, I think it's funny because, when you said that the carpet was bad is what they were talking about, I just wanted to go, and I'm sure that was written by wood people, because the carpet people are going to say, I did a research where wood is bad. You never know. The truth is usually in the middle somewhere. But there's a complete disconnect, and there should be a body somewhere that can say carpet's bad, but it's better than wood for this. Wood is good or bad. Here's the good points. Here's the bad points. Let the consumer make the educated decision.
Well, haven't there been some studies that actually properly maintain carpet is better for indoor air quality than something that doesn't hold any soils whatsoever?
Yes, and to me the most fascinating part of that conference was that none of that research, which most of it is dated. I mean, it goes back, a lot of it between 10 and 25 years. That research does not seem to have made it to these people. I had a fascinating conversation, though, with a woman, a researcher. I can't remember the university she was with. But I actually, her research basically showed that carpet was a emitter of particles or resuspender of particles at a much greater rate than hard surface floor. She did a direct comparison of carpet and hard surface floors, and she found in her research that carpet resuspended much greater than hard surface floors. So now, I said to her, and the thing that was nice about this was there was a cordiality. She wasn't defensive when I said what I said, which was, I said, you please pardon me, but my mind is kind of having a hard time processing this because I'm familiar with research that says exactly the opposite. Can you explain why your findings were different than this? And her response was essentially, I can't explain that. I know what you're talking about, and I would really like to get to the bottom of that. I would really like to understand. She went on to talk about electrostatic charges and things like that. I mean, they are really smart people. I was the only one that wasn't a PhD in the room. And I told them, I'm pretty intimidated here, but you know what? I knew a lot more about maintaining carpet than any of them did. So I did have that advantage. But it was the thing that I liked about it was a very productive conversation. They asked me to share the research that I was familiar with them. Now, what will happen with that afterwards? I don't know. I just don't know the answer to that. But to me, what that says to me is there is an opportunity for collaboration if we do it right. And I think CIRI is the right organization to do it because it is a professional technical organization, not a trade association. They are going to be much more skeptical of a trade association just because of the type of organization. It's not that they're bad. It's just academia. We have a bunch of PhDs on the SAC, so they know how to talk to each other. And our PhDs on the SAC understand people like me. That's where we can make those connections.
Well, one thing that I relate this to is I think about all these hotels who are going from carpet in the room to hard surface in the room. Now, granted, the hard surface is vinyl tile, vinyl plank, still the same premise as hardwood. Nothing's going to absorb into it. So without a study for a hotel to say one's better than the other, that's pretty gutsy change on their part. But it kind of goes through what I was saying before as far as not knowing what the next step is. Once they started putting these vinyl floors in these hotels, indoor air quality wasn't really the problem. It was sound. No one thought about the sound that the carpet and the cushion was blocking. And now they're trying to do it with hard surface. And now these rooms are so much louder. So everything is connected.
I'd be interested to see the side of that where it comes in with the fact that you get cleaning and soils driven in between the joints or the seams of the vinyl planks through these areas. Then underneath that, so you've got moisture, you've got darkness, and you've got the moisture coming through the concrete that's normally there, that when you have a carpet down is pretty much just passing through, unless you've got, vapor barrier on top of the cushion, something like that. But you've got that vapor barrier. I mean, there's all these different things that go into whether or not a floor covering is right for a given application. And I think the science part of it is the only place you can really answer it because, manufacturers are going to sell what the people want. And if they've got a decorator saying that vinyl floor is exactly what people want to see in a hotel room, they're going to sell it to them. And I don't blame them.
Decorators make the world go around, right?
I'm going to take a look. We're a little over half done here. And as we've said, we're hoping at some point to involve some other companies after I just said that about manufacturers, which wasn't negative. But divergent adhesives.
I've heard of those people.
Great friend of the show. Is a new way of looking at adhesives. It started with the idea of providing high-quality adhesive for high-quality installers. Their team has a strong technical background and is ready to help with your installation. Divergent's motto is, "Our experience ensures your success." With a full line of resilient wood and carpet adhesives, let them help you be successful. They currently have distribution in the Southeast and are actively looking for new distributor partners across the U.S. If you are interested in looking at their lineup, contact them at 407-383-6446 or 1-877-GLUE-DUDE. That's 1-877-GLUDUDE, or visit www.divergentadhesives.com. I know the guy that owns that, and he's phenomenal.
He's an ass.
He's
No, I appreciate it, Paul. I'm glad Divergent can be a part of this and help get it going. So we love talking to people. We love training people. So this was the natural next step for us, wasn't it, Paul?
It really was. I think that this is a very passive learning tool. You know, it's something that you can really use to, you put something like this on while you're at work and you pick things up.
Yeah,
and
I'm telling you, there's guys going to be listening to this. They're going to be throwing down pad. They're going to be throwing down strip. They're going to be spreading glue. They're going to be working, and they're listening, and they're educating themselves on more than just the flooring that they're looking at right then and there, which I think that's the biggest part. And if we can make our industry smarter, we've made our industry better. So that's kind of the focus behind it.
Absolutely. Divergent Adhesives. Check them out at a store near you or near you soon, hopefully.
Yep. That's my cell phone. Give me a call anytime.
So before we got going today, in rehearsal, remember rehearsal? Yeah. No?
Yeah.
4 hours.
Mostly I remember the battles about football and baseball, and those were the fun parts.
Yeah, well, I won. I know I won the rehearsal and the show, but anyway,
Got
But
me
lost
off.
the game. But you're going to lose the game.
But one of the things we were talking about, and one of the things that I find very interesting is we have a lot of conversation about associations, but one aspect that affects every one of us is standards. Doesn't matter if you're installing, cleaning, inspecting, manufacturing, you've got standards that you have to live by. In the case of manufacturing, there's ASTM standards that they specifically refer to. We've got standards for cleaning from ANSI. We've got, ISO. And one of the things that you were talking about was the relationship between each other. And I found that very interesting. Can you explain what ISO is to ANSI, to ASTM? And
That's great.
Sure. As my understanding of it is, and again, we had some discussion that there may be some gray areas that we need to get clear, but my understanding is that
As a general statement, what you're saying, this is a general statement, is completely true. Yeah.
okay, and that is that ISO is the international organization that oversees standards worldwide, and under ISO are typically either national or they could still be international organizations that do standards within countries and potentially within regions.
You're 0 for 2.
At least I was quick on that one.
The only thing left is the fax machine may ring.
You just jinxed us. You totally jinxed us.
what, with a call from the 90s? What are you serious?
That's right. So under the internet ISO are these either national or regional. For instance, I believe there is an organization that covers the EU. There may also be at least one organization that covers the UK separately or distinctly from the EU overall. But there is the international organization, there are national organizations that oversee standards writing. And then there are organizations such as ASTM, IICRC, I believe ASHRAE is another standards writing organization. These are organizations that have been accredited by the national organization. In this case, it would be ANSI, American National Standards Institute certifications. So ANSI doesn't write them, but they basically establish the process and monitor the process that individual organizations, what did I say? Accredited standards writing organizations use to put together standards. As I understand it, all of the ANSI standards are consensus standards. You talked a little bit about consensus before, Sonny, and I thought that is an interesting discussion. You know, that whole area, what's consensus as opposed to science, and how do they work together?
So as part of that, we talked some last week, although we probably should have talked more about ASTM, but IICRC is an ANSI body. You've worked with IICRC, I've worked with IICRC, Sonny's a TAC chair with IICRC. IICRC has really added a lot of pins, a lot of different standards that are under development. Where do you see that going as far as the amount of standards that are developed, the kinds of standards that are developed? Do you see that expanding? Do you see that kind of riding the same wave it is now, or the same path it is now with the number of standards that are out there and worked on? Each new one they add, obviously, you've got to review standards that are existing. Each new one that's added has to then exist within the organization for basically perpetuity. Where do you see that going with IICRC? How far do you see their reach?
Well, I'm an outsider on that, so I will give you what I've observed, but you probably would be a lot better than me, since you serve on the board of directors of the IICRC, to provide.
Way to call me out. Thanks.
Just saying. Of course, you're not on the board. That doesn't mean you're on the standards and directly involved in overseeing standards. However, as best I can tell, observing what's going on, it seems that the IICRC is kind of moving in the direction of ASTM and ASHRAE in particular, who tend to, these are the organizations that I'm at least somewhat familiar with, who tend to break standards into smaller chunks and publish kind of technically specific standards, as opposed to large standards. The IICRC typically has done large standards, a standard on water damage restoration, as a good example. I think that.
How would they break that up?
Pardon me?
How could they break that up? A subject like that, how could that possibly be broken up into smaller standards?
Well, I'm not certain, but my guess, my thought would be that you could break it up into types of water loss and types of, because the whole idea in water restoration is to take things that have been water damaged and get them dry and decontaminated. And different types of water loss, the dynamics involved in fixing them are in restoring those environments is different. So they could break it down and focus on, lack of a better, you could be looking at wall cavities. You could look at wall cavities from the perspective of a water pipe break as opposed to a hurricane or a flood, a water, different types of water that comes in. There are a variety of ways they can break it down. Now, I don't know that they're going to do that. I'm just saying that it seems like what they're doing and taking out a lot of new pins is they seem to be more narrowly focused in these pins. Now, the good thing about that is it is easier to develop a standard on something when you're not trying to standardize the whole universe of that subject matter, but only a particular part of it. The challenging thing for the IICRC, I think, will be every standard they do, they've got to get a consensus body,
Mm-hmm.
and they've got to have meetings. I mean, each standard they write has to be properly represented in order for it to meet ANSI guidelines. And that is kind of a big, that is a big challenge for an organization like the IICRC that already is depending on scores, if not hundreds of volunteers to work with them. Now we're adding even more and more time. They're already challenged that way. Can they do it? Sure. But I mean, it will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think that there's some ideas there with different standards being broken up that could apply to certain ones that I've worked on recently, and looks like it is applying to it. I'm not sure there's public knowledge about the latest PIN. I know they announced it at AIM, but I'll leave that to them. I would see those standards as being developed much more quickly, and I would see the review process of standards that were broken up greater into smaller pieces as much easier. Right now when you've got such broad topics in one standard, it takes forever to get the thing written, and then once you want to review it, it again takes forever because you're covering so many different subjects in one standard.
Exactly.
So many people. Well, everybody's got an opinion on everything. It's tough. It really is.
Opinions are like, never mind. I won't share that on the Opinions are like Yankees fans. Oh, wait, no, that's not it. Sorry, John. We got a new chair here. Kevin Pearson will be the new chair of the IICRC.
Yeah.
Thoughts on Kevin? History with Kevin? Have you worked with him in the past?
I've worked with Kevin since we were actually elected to the board of directors the same year. So I worked with him for 2 years when I was on the board of directors. And as a matter of fact, I believe we both worked on the marketing committee together. What I would say about Kevin is, well, first of all, something is kind of important. He's a survivor, and it's not easy to survive at the IICRC. I will leave it at that. I won't say any more than that. It just is what it is. The second,
notice I'm not pushing you at all on some of these things. Notice I'm
not challenging me. You're not giving me a here either, even though
I'm walking you up to the edge and seeing if you jump off. That's all.
No, my experience with Kevin has been that he listens to different points of view and has acted prudently in the things he's done. He understands. I've had many conversations with Kevin. He understands the challenge, I'll just call them challenges, that you have in an organization like the IICRC. And I am confident that he has a plan to deal with that. I hope he is successful in dealing with that. The IICRC's problem, and I know I probably should not get into political stuff, but I will only in a minor.
No.
It just puckered.
It is a highly successful organization that has a lot of strong personalities involved in it, and it is it is subject to possible influence by parochial interests, and as a consequence of that, there has been, and I told you, I go back to the mid 1980s in observing the IICRC. That's not quite the beginning, but it's pretty darn close. When I was involved, it was a for-profit organization with the shareholders, with only a couple association shareholders, primarily individual shareholders at that time. So I go back a long way with the IICRC, and the thing that I have noted repeatedly is that a propensity within leadership, and I want to distinguish leadership to function. Within leadership, for the IICRC to go through frequent revolutions, and they're almost like coups, and there is a lot of political stuff going on, a lot of and the thing about it is, I can tell you, they're well-meaning people. It's not like we have a tendency sometimes to look at it as the white hats versus the black hats. Each side sees themselves as the white hats trying to do the right thing. But
I agree with that. We went through that a little bit last week on the show, talking about, there's different opinions, but it's not like one group's trying to destroy something. That's just different ideas on what the path should be.
About the way you go about it. Now, the thing further that I have noticed, that I will say, is when the IICRC goes into a stage where the transparency gives way to almost an umbrella of secrecy, where things are not kept public but discussed behind closed doors. Almost always when that happens, soon thereafter, you have the mess of the revolution. And it is
justifiable.
People think about it, most people haven't been around that long, so you think that this is the IICRC today. It's the IICRC virtually since the very beginning. And the thing I like about Kevin is, although I don't think Kevin is under any illusions, I think, and I'm hopeful, that he has some plans that might result in some fundamental changes that will change that dynamic. I don't know if it'll work or not. I really don't. I've seen promising starts that have turned into disasters for various reasons before. So I don't know, but
Well, I think too though that one thing with the IICRC is that it's a partnership between trade associations and the Institute, and I think that gets lost sometimes. And again, if you just take people that have the best intentions, sometimes that doesn't always appear that way to people that have other ideas. We just have the idea that where a movement to try to get the best candidates on the board really appeared to be, to the other side, to be a movement to restrict the way the shareholders had elected directors. I mean, there's always that relationship that's there, and it's a tenuous relationship that some of these decisions can really look much bigger than they are. I would expect that people would understand that and maybe start to talk more about those types of decisions back and forth, have more communications about those types of options when it affects, the bylaws of the IICRC outline the powers of the shareholders and the powers of the board of directors. And so if those two powers aren't understood and respected, and if something is to change, they're talked about, that kind of helps to further that divide, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's where I say the communication. You need transparency. I think Kevin has some ideas that will help that. Right now, the biggest issues leadership-wise are between the shareholders and I'm not sure I would say the board of directors overall, but leadership, the executive committee, and there is a mutual distrust between the two groups. And as I see it, and Kevin has talked to me, he's allowed me to share some of my thoughts, which I do appreciate. He has some ideas about ways that you can change that dynamic. And I think at this point in time, that's critical. They really need to change that dynamic, because, and it's not that, again, we're not talking white hats and black hats. We're talking about just different interests and different ideas, but you got to be able to communicate it. You've got to be able to talk.
Yeah.
If you can't talk together, you're going to be talking separately, and that doesn't go well for the ICRC. Never has.
That's true in everything, John. That's a great statement.
I know.
True in everything.
Now, I got a question for you. Sonny and I were talking a little bit beforehand about we're trying to get other parts of the industry to understand each other better, right? So we need cleaners, and we need consumers to understand installation. We need installers to understand everything that happens after it's installed. But I don't know if you've got a thought on this, Sonny. It just kind of dawned on me while we were talking about it. But we talk about cleaning of the substrate. Now, that's not a microbial type cleaning, but sciences of soil suspension and removal, sciences of how to get those bond breakers off that subfloor. It'd be interesting to see if there's some sort of connection there between cleaning procedures for subfloors and how to better prepare them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we can, I can't tell you how many times we've gone to a claim, an actual claim, not just a complaint where there's a failure, and I would go over my whole claim thing with you, Paul. But we go to the job site and we can't figure out, why is something not sticking? Why is it not sticking to the substrate? Because there was something there before. It may not be there now, but there was something there before. So if we could have if we could better define, I don't know if define's the right word, but if we can better describe that to the installer to help them understand. I'll give you an example. John, you'll get a kick out of this. There's still a lot of guys who use wax-based sweeping compounds, and they'll sweep the floor with that wax-based sweeping compound. What is wax? Wax is a debonder. Nothing sticks to wax. Every time I see it, there's groups, Facebook groups that they'll say, on the job site, sweeping with my compound. Like, you can't do that. Been doing it 20 years, been doing it 30 years. So being able to show the science behind why that doesn't work would be a great example, Paul.
And your hotel Wi-Fi is starting to freeze up on us, so just that's what I was smiling about. I can't hear you, and the way you're freezing up now and then is hilarious.
Ugly mug to begin with, so I can't imagine when this freezes up. I think it's funny though. I've been sitting there trying to figure out, what's this backdrop? What does it look like? I look like Diamond Dave, the Redneck Ninja. So if you go to YouTube and search Diamond Dave, like, dang, they're at the same place. That's exactly what I look like.
You don't have any guns in that room, do you, Sonny?
Yeah. Just this one right here. Judy John.
Well, John, I appreciate you joining us. We're coming up on our hour here, and I don't want to keep you too much longer than what we've committed you for. I think we've left a lot of information out here. I'd like to have you back in the future. But tell us about how you can join or start to participate with CIRI, and who's really eligible to join or likely to join CIRI.
So there are 3 membership categories, and thank you for the opportunity, Paul. There are 3 membership categories. The first one is the category is trainers and instructors. The second category is researchers and scientists. And then the third category, and this is kind of weird, especially given some of the conversation we've had, is it's a partner membership category for trade associations. The first two categories are individual categories of membership, and they're kind of self-explanatory. The benefit of somebody that does training to be involved in a cleaning science research organization is, pretty obvious. You want to get good information, useful information, to be able to use that in the training programs you develop. The second one, for scientists and researchers, is fairly obvious. They're the people that do the research and the science, and we have a fair amount of involvement in that area that we want to develop even more. The trade associate, and this is an area that we made a significant change, and we are thinking about revisiting it because we haven't had any trade association memberships so far. And we've been over a year now since we opened CIRI back up to membership. The partner memberships with trade associations, the idea was that the associations would, the membership would be with the associations, but through the associations, CIRI would reach their members with science and research information. So that the benefit for the associations would be that they, basically through them, the people that are cleaners and restorers and installers and various types of technicians, remediators and things like that, that those people would basically learn the science, be involved in the research through their associations. The weak link is if we can't get associations to participate, then that isn't working. So we are revisiting that. We haven't given up on that, but we're looking at maybe modifying the program, and if we need to, figuring it out. I mean, something like what we're doing, you go with what you think is the best thing, and if it isn't working, then you look at, all right, so how do we need to make modifications in order to make it work right? The best way to answer your question about best way to learn or possibly join CIRI is to go to the CIRI website. And the CIRI website is www.CIRI, which is CIRI, science, SCIENCE.org. Or the other thing is, if anybody wants or interested, and maybe I don't know if you're able to, they'll probably can post messages after the show. You could forward them to me. I'd be happy to talk to anybody. My email address is john@ciriscience.org.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for joining us. Next week on the show, looks like we're going to have Seth Pavarnik of Ardex USA. Looking forward to it. Seth's been a partner with us in education and helped us with the NAFCT classes, substrates classes.
He's a big contributor for sure.
Yep, he's on the S220. He's the vice chair of the ISSI Introduction to Subfloor Substrate Inspection for IICRC. And really, just as far as floor prep goes, as far as the science of installation goes, one of the smartest guys I've ever talked to. You want to reach out to us, you can reach us at floorupodcast.com shortly. That's almost done. You can email us at floorupodcast@gmail.com. I am Paul Pleshek. He was Sonny Callahan, and he is John Downey. Thank you guys very much.
Hey,
and
real quick.
Yes, sir.
I got to give a shout out. Today is my sister's birthday. Happy birthday, Kathy Williams. Love you, and now I'll know if you watch or not if you say something back to me.
So now you're going to make me look bad for not saying happy anniversary to my wife. Thanks, Sonny.
Oh, you better do it.
Appreciate it. 14 years with my wife, Cindy Pleshek, as of today. She must be a saint.
She is.
Thank you guys very
deaf,
much.
I guess.
Thank you guys very much, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Sonny.
Thanks, John.